Catholic Moments, Episode 157, Why God Matters.
Catholic Moments is sponsored by CatholicMatch.com, the leading Catholic singles community. Being single can be a challenge. Catholic Match helps make it a little easier. To get started today, visit CatholicMatch.com/Lisa.
Blooming, finding joy in the journey and hope in the heaven yet to come. Blooming.
Hello and welcome to Catholic Moments. And now, here's your host and my mom, Lisa Hendy.
Well, hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Catholic Moments, the show from CatholicMom.com, where we talk about all things faith, family, and fun from a Catholic perspective. And just want to say thank you right up front to our wonderful songstress, Teresa Smith, and also to the sponsors of this show, CatholicMatch.com. They are the leading online singles community for Catholic singles, and it's really exciting over there that they've actually launched a brand new blog this past week. So head over to CatholicMatch.com/Lisa and check it out if you're someone who's interested in meeting some friends who share your values and share your faith. So thanks again to the great folks from CatholicMatch.com. We've got a great show for you this week. I'm so happy to welcome to the show a friend of mine, Karina Fabian. Many of you know her in Catholic writing circles as the author of some fabulous books. And this week we spoke with Karina and her father, Deacon Steve Lumbert, about their brand new book, Why God Matters, and how to recognize him in daily life. And so that's kind of the theme of our show this week, recognizing God, hearing his voice in our day-to-day life. And I have to tell you, I've been hearing his voice all week this week. It's been kind of a challenging week for me. We had a great trip to San Francisco on Monday for Labor Day. Greg and Adam and I spent the better part of the day driving to the Bay Area and then enjoying being in the city, which is something I always love. It was our first trip without Eric, so that was a little tender for me. And I have to say that there's no place that I feel closer to God than right there next to the water. So being able to look out over the bay and to see the sun bouncing off of the water in a clear, sunny, bright day in San Francisco was just a really nice way to recognize God's voice in my daily life. And then the week started. And boy, what a week it's been. I am just sort of struggling this week with a big workload. My close friends, and I guess I should share with our audience too, should know that I've started work on my next book. I'm so excited that I'm going to be putting out another book with Ave Maria Press, and so I'm now currently working with a deadline, and so I'm back to work on writing and just trying to fit everything else in. And I think it was the fact that we had a 4-day work week this week, and the fact that it was fitting 5 days of work into 4 days that kind of threw me for a loop. So I've been behind all week. And then yesterday was a certain day in our house. It was my son Eric's birthday. So you recognize him as the announcer on this show. But Eric is back there in Harvard. So this is my first birthday without him. So I'm missing him, and happy birthday, Eric. I love you. Hope you had a great celebration. I know he did. So that's why this week's theme of Why God Matters is really timely for me, because I've been talking to him a lot this week and just asking him to help me through what has been, like I said, kind of a trying and challenging week. We're also, and I can ask you for your prayers on this, dealing with some bug issues over at CatholicMom.com. It seems that a certain little hacker or worm has wormed its way into our WordPress installation over at the website, and so we're dealing with some pretty major virus issues. So if you'll keep that in your prayers, and I'm lucky to have somebody who's working with me on that, Tim Norton. If you're looking for a great web developer, he's really the best, but I'm keeping him busy this week with all my issues. So say a prayer for that. And so once again, I'm going to be really pointing you to the wise words of Karina Fabian and her father, Deacon Steve Lumbert. But before we get to that interview, I love to kick things off every week with everyone's favorite online deacon. And here he is, Deacon Tom Fox.
Well, I'd like to share a couple experiences from this summer. My lovely bride Dee and I drove from the southwest to the east this summer, a round-trip jaunt of 5,000 miles by the time we made all our stops. One of the stops was for me to go to Franciscan University for my 5th annual participation in the Priest-Deacon Seminarian Conference and Retreat. I arrived and checked in at the university in time to join in what they call the Traveler's Mass. It was a Monday afternoon, 4 p.m. liturgy, and I was gifted with being a deacon. And from the opening notes of the entrance hymn, God's grace and His approval washed over my soul and heart. To me, there was no question. I knew I was hearing God's non-audible voice. "Welcome, Tom. I'm glad you're here. You will draw closer to me this week." Now, a completely different experience, but sort of related. When we came home from that trip, a young teen girl who had been taking care of our flowers and plants came over to return our house keys. Her name is Jacqueline, and she happened to mention that she had signed up to go to the Tucson Steubenville Youth Event, one of some 20 or more Steubenville youth events held around the country each summer. She was bummed that no one else in our parish had signed up for it, and so our parish canceled any participation of teens in this powerful weekend down in Tucson. Well, the very next day, catch this, I received an email from a deacon friend in the Archdiocese of Denver. He asked if it was possible for us to come up to Denver to help with their Steubenville of the Rockies event. Fat chance, I thought, since we had just come back from 3 weeks of being away. I prayed about it, sent an email to our pastor, and that very day he replied and said to plan on going. Then Dee said, "I wonder if Jacqueline would like to go with us to Denver." We called her, and long story short, within about 12 hours, the whole thing came together. We were approved to go to Denver. The young teen girl Jacqueline had permission of her parents to come with us, and we connected Jacqueline with a teen group at a parish in the Denver suburbs. She rode with us in our drive to Denver, and we had a great time together. It was one of those experiences of feeling God's hand guiding circumstances for something He approved of. It may not happen in the ways I've described in this deacon moment, but when you feel an interior jolt of joy and peace, those moments when you feel that a really good thing feels right and that it will happen, I submit to you that you are hearing God's voice. Sometimes we use the word coincidence, and you may know the old saying, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. This is Deacon Tom, and I'm always trying to listen for God's voice and wishing you blessings.
Hey, Deacon Tom, what a great reflection. And I'm just thinking about how much I've been pestering God this week, and I don't know if I've spent enough time listening for His voice. I think I've been spending more time talking to Him. So I'm going to focus this weekend on doing some listening of my own. And I want to thank you for another great Deacon moment and refer everybody over to www.deacontomonline.com and especially to catholicvitamins.com for your weekly dose of great stuff from Deacon Tom and his lovely wife, Dee. And now let's turn to our favorite little teenager, Avery, with this week's teen moment.
Hi, this is Avery from the Live Out Loud podcast, bringing you this week's teen moment. Okay, so I was really excited this week when I learned that some of the conversation in today's show was going to be revolving a little bit around the theme of finding God in our day-to-day lives. And I think this is something that's really great to think about and reflect on, because I know most of us, I know I can, struggle with this a lot sometimes. And it's easy to find Jesus, or it's easier to find Jesus, when we're kneeling before the consecrated host in adoration and physically in the true presence. It's easier to find Jesus when we're at our Bible study on Wednesday night or doing personal prayer. God is pretty easy most of the time to find on Sundays. And I'm not discrediting those experiences that we have then at Mass and adoration and such. But what about the other 6 days of the week? Think about it. Who gave you life? Who gave you those other 6 days of the week? Who had that crazy awesome idea to create you, to give you every single moment, and then throw in free will along to go side it? Then, who realizes how much we mess up, knows all of our flaws, and still loves us, regardless and unfailingly? Who gave up His life for our sins? who loves us beyond all reasonable belief? That would be God. So in those other 6 days, in those days that we have that just day-to-day mundane and monotonous times, getting up crazy, unearthly early hours, going to school, spending the whole day at school, going to sports practice or something after school, doing your homework, doing more homework, and doing more homework after that, then going to bed really late and repeating 5 days in a row. Where is God in that? We do this thing in our Life Teen Bible study each week called Where I Saw God. And we have 30 or 40 of us, and we just go around the room and say where we saw God in our lives each week. And I love hearing all of them. It's important to recognize God, to recognize that our blessings come from God, to see Christ in other people. It's not always about having that burning bush wake you up in the middle of the night kind of experience. It's about recognizing God in those day-to-day times, to see Christ in other people. The best advice that I can give for people trying to find God in day-to-day life is try to get out of relativism. Don't let yourself be fully wrapped up in anything other than the loving arms of Christ. Pray, ask Him for help, surrender, realize that God made you, loves you, and has way better plans for you than you could ever come up with yourself. And then trust. And trust me, you'll start to find Him. So with something to think about this week, I'm Avery, and this was your Teen Moment.
Okay, folks, all I can say is, wow, nothing like having things put in perspective for you by a 14-year-old. Hey, Avery, thank you for another great reflection, sweetie, and really for putting my head where it needed to be this week. I've been really pondering your words, and I know how right you are. So if you'd like to hear more from Avery, and honestly, I think we should all hear more from Avery, you can visit her over at her website at www.livewtl.com, and be sure to subscribe to the Live Out Loud podcast. It's really fabulous. And here's somebody that we all know and love with this week's Mary Moment, the wonderful Sarah Reinhardt.
Hello, my name's Elizabeth.
And my name's Sarah Reinhardt.
It's time for Mary Moment.
There's comfort for me in the sorrowful mysteries, one that brings me both to my knees and to tears. Here is Jesus, God, reduced to the cruelty of others, the whim of a crowd, the suffering that will save us all. Not far away, I see Mary, tears streaking down her face as she accepts the torture, says yes, once again, to God's will. I am the person holding the cup of suffering, dumping it on Jesus' undeserving head in the garden. It is my selfishness, my insistence on hurting others, my many ongoing sins that make the marks on His back, maim His body, bruise every bit of His flesh. I crown Him over and over, digging the barbs deeper into the tender area of His temples. And then there are all the ways I add to the weight of His cross as He carries it. Beneath the cross, near the end, I so often turn away, letting the world tug me away from the redemption of suffering, opting instead for the easy road. The sorrowful mysteries are deeply personal for me. The story, through Jesus, of a lifetime of intimate, internal struggling. Within the tears they inspire, I find the hope of suffering, the hand extended to carry me through life's most difficult and challenging times. I have found, as I stand at the foot of the cross with Mary, that there is even beauty there amid the blood and anguish. There is a rose blooming, a hug given, a prayer offered. From the desolation of Good Friday, I glimpse the joy of Easter Sunday. My path is not so hard, knowing the company I keep. I need only remind myself of the arms stretched wide on the cross, ready to embrace me in a hug crushing all my problems, to know, once again, the solace of the sorrowful mysteries.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I've really been enjoying these reflections that you're doing on the sorrowful mysteries, and I know that next week's reflection on the agony in the garden is going to be a continuation of these very touching and meaningful words that you're sharing with us. So thank you for doing this as you grow closer to a very special moment in your life as well. And please make sure that you go over and visit Sarah. You can reach her through her website at snoringscholar.com. And as always, we have links in our show notes to all of our contributors' websites. And I hope that you'll visit them and support their individual efforts and thank them for being a part of the Catholic Moments team too. Some people call it pod squatting, but I call it a family. So thank you, Sarah. And now I'm so happy to share with you my conversation from earlier this week with Karina Fabian and her father, Deacon Steve Lumbert. And here is our chat. I hope you enjoy it.
I'm so happy on today's episode to welcome two co-authors, a father and daughter, one of whom is actually a very wonderful friend of mine and one of my favorite authors as well.
Aww.
And today we welcome Deacon Steve and Karina Fabian, Deacon Steve Lumbert. Let me give you a little introduction to their background, and we'll be discussing today their great new book, Why God Matters. To let you know a little bit more about this father-son duo, Deacon Steve Lumbert is a convert who came to appreciate his faith after marrying a Catholic woman, Socorro, but finally took the plunge after their children were grown. And once he was fully immersed in the faith, he didn't stop and became a deacon, and now he's the parish administrator at St. Anne's Parish in Pueblo, Colorado. And our second guest today, Karina Lumbert Fabian, is his daughter and an award-winning writer of science fiction and fantasy. Some of my favorite books come from Karina. She's a cradle Catholic, and she's the founder and an officer with the Catholic Writers Guild, and writes Catholic student planners, as well as in collaboration with her father on this particular book, which is her first work of nonfiction, Why God Matters. And I want to welcome, first of all, Deacon Steve to the show. How are you today, Deacon Steve?
Oh, I'm doing just really pretty good. Things are going great so far.
Good. And Karina, how's your day going?
Today is going calm, and I'm very thankful for that.
Well, we're having the chance to work during what I know is a busy week for so many of us. I don't know why these weeks where we take the Monday off and have a holiday feel like they're busier than ever. So it's a good day to be talking about why God matters, I think. And what I'd like to have you do, maybe Karina, you can do this for us, is to introduce us to this particular book and tell us what readers are going to find with Why God Matters and how to recognize him in daily life.
Well, one thing that a lot of people seem to think is that if you're really going to experience God, you're going to have that burning bush moment. It's going to be something big and huge, and God will come and talk to you, and then that's when you know really that God is there and he's saying something. But in reality, for the most of us, God's not going to come to us in those big moments. I mean, yes, he does do that, but it's in the small things, the very day-to-day, the whispers in our life that God is there and God is speaking to us, and sometimes very powerfully. And so our book is an examination of those kind of moments in our lives, sometimes where we actually knew that God was there and speaking with us, right in that moment. And sometimes it's a 20/20 hindsight that came years later. But always those smaller things. And then we have some exercises that we hope will help the reader to be able to learn to open themselves up to seeing God's presence, to feeling God's love, and to hearing God's word in those small daily activities in their lives. And then we bolster that with scriptures and also with quotes from the Catechism of the Catholic Church.
it's such a wonderful book. Deacon Steve, I do want to ask you kind of how this, I know your daughter, and I know what a mover and a shaker she is and how she makes things happen. And I'm wondering how this particular book came about, if this was an idea that you had or that Karina had and came to you, or, how it was born.
Well, actually, the way it worked out was that the publisher, Tribute Books, contacted Karina about doing a book on a general line like this. And at first she said, well, I don't think I could do that. But then she was thinking about the fact that I'm a deacon, and she called me up and she says, well, how would you like to write a book together? And that's how it started.
And you can't say no to Karina, can you? I can't.
Well, it's a little hard.
So this is your first book. How has the process been for you, and how was it to write alongside your daughter?
Well, it was a very interesting beginnings, I'll tell you that. Because I'm a retired state trooper, and as it turns out, I write in a chronological aspect. And I've been doing that with reports for 30 years. So my first try at one of my stories, of course, was to send it to Karina, and she was going to edit it. Well, the editing, really, she told me to begin with, she says, I'm a real critic, Dad. Yeah, I want you to understand that. And she says, but what I'm doing is trying to help you to make it a better story, because she's already accomplished as a writer, as you know. Well, when I got the story back, all I saw on the side was red lines through a lot of stuff, and then it's all these little comments on the side, and I kept thinking, oh, wait a minute. This is my story. But when I started putting it together the way she was suggesting, it really made sense in that respect. So in a way, for me, it was a tiny bit rocky to begin with, but then I had to feel positive in respect that, she knew what she was doing, and it apparently has been fantastic, because I am flabbergasted at how well received our book has been.
Well, it's a real treat to be able to hear a story from someone like you as well, who has gone through, I have a heart for people in your situation. My husband was not Catholic when we married and wasn't Catholic for the first 17 years of our marriage. How do you think your conversion story and then your finding of your deacon vocation played into where you are right now with the writing and with the book?
Well, actually, I think it just was a part of God's plan all the way through, that he had this plan for me, and he kept giving me all of these opportunities. And as I said yes to the opportunities, it was to bring me forward to all of the different things that I needed to do in my life in order to truly follow him. And this writing of the book is just one other aspect of the entire, my entire life history, you could say. And it's a new experience, and it's just been fantastic. I think it all ties together with the fact that God is active in our lives. We just need to recognize it.
Karina, let's talk about that for just a minute. Now, I know that your background is largely in fiction writing, and the transition here, I think it's kind of natural that your storytelling abilities come to play in this, but how was it for you to branch into the nonfiction world?
Well, I actually started with nonfiction. When I first started writing, I was writing for a diocese magazine and doing a lot of interviews, and even got to do a few first-person kind of articles. A couple of the stories that are in Why God Matters actually started out in Wyoming Catholic Register. So it wasn't too big a jump for me, but I think that just having written so much fiction, it did give me a little bit more of an idea of how to get to the real heart of the story. And like Dad was saying, he goes into the chronological, and there was a lot of details and stuff, and so there's a lot of weeding through the details to figure out which ones give you the actual impact you want for what you want your story to say. And so the fiction writing helped me with that. And one thing I want to say is that even though my poor dad, he went through the ringer, I know other writers who would have thrown up their hands and just said, forget it, I'm not dealing with you again. And he just sort of swallowed hard, and he would come back with the most amazing stuff. And so it was a great experience to be able to work with him, too, on that. And it was wonderful because it's a whole nother chapter in our father-daughter relationship too. So that's been real rewarding just for that.
I'm envious because I'm a daddy's girl, and I would love to do a project like this with my dad. So you've planted a seed with me. But let's talk for a minute, Deacon Steve, about there are people out there who haven't had that major conversion experience, or haven't. Their faith has been sort of a quiet part of their life for as long as they can remember. And maybe sometimes they feel a little bit distant or separated from God. What kind of encouragement do you offer in the book, and what would you say to them as far as just looking for God in these everyday moments in your life?
Well, I think the best way to explain it is as I went through the different stories of my life, that and these, of course, are true stories of what happened, and different things in my life, that I didn't see God at that time, although I had a certain kind of faith. And it just, later as I contemplated things, it really made me realize how much God had always been there, active, bringing to us His love and His compassion and His guidance, if you will, because many times there was that. And for people to realize that, they have to really kind of go through, and that's one of the reasons why we have these little life lessons, if you will, at the end of each chapter, is so that it gives people an opportunity to look at their own life and maybe take some of the things we mentioned and see how it works out for them, where they have been missing what God has been saying to them in their past life, or maybe even in their present life, and and helping them to better understand what God really has in store for them.
Karina, how is it to share kind of the personal nature of some of the stories that you've shared in this book, and how has your the rest of your family felt about the writing of this particular book?
There were a couple of stories that were difficult, especially where I was talking about my son. I wasn't going to do that story. In fact, even now I'm just kind of tearing up even thinking about it. I was not going to write that story. For my son, for a long time, hadn't really believed. And there wasn't a big, well, hey, this kind of thing happened, and so I don't believe. Mm-hmm. It's just something in his personality is making it hard for him to believe. And we worked with that for a very long time, and now we're kind of at the point where, he's 17 years old, and we have to say, okay, look, we love you, we respect you, we hope that someday you'll understand, but until then, because you don't, we still love and respect you. And but it's not something I would really go and talk to people about. Mm-hmm. So to write that story, and I'm not even sure why, I needed one more story because Dad had done his 7 and I had 6. And I sat down and it just started coming, and I was like, no, I'm not putting this in there. But it was already being written. My fingers were going, and so I just let it go. And then my dad was talking about how sometimes you have to go back. That's when I went back, and I realized, I had a father who had to go through this experience. My husband went through a very similar experience. And even though I knew that, I didn't know it, but somehow in writing that story, I did. And so it was a very healthy thing for me. I think that the Holy Spirit really was pushing me to do that. And there have been several times where reviewers or blogs of people who have read the book have said how much that particular story helped them, because they, too, have someone in their lives that doesn't believe, and it's very hard. And so this story gives them a little bit of of hope, and also helps them know they're not alone. And in turn, now I know I'm not as alone either.
Right.
So even though it was very difficult to share that and to share it so publicly, it's been just a real blessing.
I think that those are the things that when you open up your heart and your soul a little bit and let people see the things that you've struggled with in your own personal life and not being a struggle that's actually more universal, I think, than we think. A loved one who's having a crisis of faith. Those are the things that really attract people to a book like yours because it's not just sort of faceless or a little bit impersonal church teaching. It's actually somebody, or in this case, two people who are really ardently trying to live out their faith walk with both the ups and the downs that come along with it. So I congratulate you for having the courage to share that. Deacon Steve, how have your parishioners at the parish where you're the administrator received the book?
In a very positive manner. There's been some who have been asking me for a copy of it, and I'm very happy to provide that for them.
Uh-huh.
And it's just been in a very positive manner that they've received it. And a lot of them are surprised, to find out that we did, in collaboration with Karina, of course, but I wrote a book. And
they're probably wondering how you found the time.
Well, finding the time, but not only
there's
that,
a story.
Is that just one of those other things that God has done for you, or because you're, people are always telling me that you got so many skills and things that you've been doing, and of course over the period of my life I've done a lot of different things, and they say they're just amazed, that now I'm writing a book.
Yeah, it's a real gift, and I think that you should be very proud of your daughter as well. I think she's probably just been one of my big role models in my own personal writing. Karina, I can't let you get away without asking you to talk just a little bit about the Guild and your help in establishing that and kind of the state of the Catholic Writers Guild at this time.
Okay, well, the Catholic Writers Guild is it's an international, internet-based organization of Catholic writers, editors, publishers, illustrators, podcasters, just about anyone that deals with the written word, or in some cases the broadcast word. And our goal is simply to further, we call it the art of Catholic arts and letters, bringing out literature that, in all its forms, that supports and acknowledges our faith in a very positive and approving manner. Our president, Ann Lewis, likes to say that we're out there competing with the world of secular ideas. And so we have kind of a dual mission. The first is simply to support each other in our craft, and it's not just in writing things, like Why God Matters, or writing, an RCIA book or something like that, but also in just writing stories, fiction stories, science fiction stories, mysteries, children's books, tell-alls, whatever, that nonetheless show our faith in a very positive light. And so that's our first mission, is just supporting each other. The second mission, of course, is to help bring each other up, help us to improve our skills, helping us to make contacts with other publishers, critiques, and the whole gamut of things that writers do to help each other in order to succeed. And the one nice thing about it is, if one of us succeeds, we all succeed. There's no competition against the writers.
I love that aspect of it, and we are looking forward to the next upcoming online Catholic Writers Conference, which is free to anyone who's interested in writing. We'll have a link to CatholicWritersConference.com on the website, and I want everyone to know that that's coming up March 21st through the 27th, but it's not too early now to start planning for your participation in that. And I also want to point to the websites whygodmatters.com, which is the official website for this book, and also to fabianspace.com, which is Karina Fabian's wonderful website with so much information about her and all of her other books and accomplishments. Karina, are there any closing thoughts before we let you guys get back into your busy day that you'd like to share with the listening audience?
Oh boy, not offhand. If you're a Catholic writer, I do encourage you to check out the Guild, and definitely to look into the conference. And even though it's a Catholic Writers Conference, if you are a Christian and interested, the online conference tends to be not. It tends to be a little more generic in its topics and that kind of thing. So Christians are certainly welcome. And otherwise, I very much appreciate being here today, and I hope your readers will take a look at our book and enjoy it. And if you do like it, we have a comment section on the whygodmatters.com. You can share your own faith stories there too.
And I think that people who are interested in the book should also take a look at the news section of the website, where you've got tons of great reviews and interviews of people that have had the chance to interact with this particular book. It's really a great testament to the book. I have to say one last thing is that for people out there who are thinking about writing, and maybe if you've never even written anything more than a love letter to your husband or a story for your children, the Catholic Writers Guild and that particular conference is a very welcoming environment. So don't feel like if you're not already a published author that you're very welcome in those places. So I hope people will know that. Deacon Steve, I want to thank you for your time. Any closing thoughts that you'd like to share, or from a deacon's perspective, any last words of inspiration for our listeners?
Well, just one comment that a lot of people have asked me when my next book's coming out already.
Yes.
And as it turns out, Karina and I are already talking about what we want to do. It's going to be based on the diaconate, but it's not going to be a book that's a theological or historical relationship of the diaconate and, the things that deacons do in the in a structured sense. What it's going to be, when we really are considering it, and what we think we're going to do is it's going to be personal stories about various aspects of the diaconate coming from many different deacons, and we're going to try and put it together and see how that works.
Great.
Yeah, you can tell he's just a little excited.
I think it's great. And, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to listen to our show, but Deacon Tom Fox, who's a regular star of Catholic Moments, needs to be on your short list for people that you're considering for that book.
Oh,
he's
email me his
fabulous.
name. Email me his name.
I'm the president of the Deacon Tom fan club. So
oh, cool.
I think that's a greatly needed resource, and with so many people out there interested in the vocation to the permanent diaconate, I know that'll be really well received. Well, sadly, that's all the time that we have for today. I do want to point our listeners to howgodmatters.com and also to fabianspace.com, and just to thank
whygodmatters.com.
I'm sorry, Why God Matters, not how, why. Whygodmatters.com, and of course you'll find the links in our show notes. And to Deacon Steve Lumbert and to Karina Lumbert Fabian, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's been great to talk to you again.
Thanks again to Karina and to Deacon Steve for being our guests on this week's podcast, and be sure to check out their great book, Why God Matters. We'll have links in the show notes over at catholicmom.com and at catholicmoments.com and everywhere else that you listen to this podcast. And I have a couple of newsy kinds of things that I want to share with you. Let me see. I'm just going to pull up my email here. The first thing is a blog post that I put up over at catholicmom.com this week, and this is from our friend Joshua K., Josh from Ohio, and he has this really fascinating project that he's got going on called One Voice, One Church. He's headed up an initiative over at Kickstarter.com, and that's a place where you can start projects and seek funding for those. So he's seeking $125 for this goal. I'm just going to read you his little announcement. He says, "In the heart of 1,000 journals, I'd like to send out 5 blank journals into the Catholic community. The holder of the journal has the special opportunity to share their faith with other Catholics in words, art, or whatever other way the Spirit moves them. When the holder of the journal has created an entry page, he now has the obligation of passing it on to another faithful person with the hopes that the journals will one day be completed and returned to me. When I've received a completed journal, I'll share the journal pages in both picture and video form online so that others can enjoy. I've titled the project One Voice, One Church. With the funds, I plan to purchase 5 really nice journals and make them into unique and set them apart from any other just ordinary journal. Each journal will have specific guidelines and directions on how the current holder can keep the community updated on the specific journal's whereabouts. Also, some of the funds may go toward the shipping of the journals to different parts of the world, like Japan and Canada, opposite sides of the United States. Be assured that if we go ahead and go above and beyond the goal of $125, that the extra funds will go towards better journals, or perhaps we could up the number of journals that we send out. But if we do not reach the goal, then the project fails and we all go back to our boring lives. Ultimately, I hope that people have fun with this project and that we will be inspired by one another and by the gifts that God has given us. I love this idea, and I want to see it happen. I've already gone over to Kickstarter.com and threw in my little donation, and if each of us listening to the podcast does it, we'll be to Josh's goal of $125 in no time. And what a great thing. I know that you guys have probably been subjected to the Flat Stanley project that so many little kids seem to have in class this day, and I love the idea of taking a prayer journal and passing it around our Catholic online community. So head over and support this project, and please make this dream a reality. The second news information item I want to tell you about is a great event happening in Northern California for Catholic families, and this is being hosted actually by several of the dioceses in Northern California. The website for this is norcalcatholicyouth.com, and we'll have that link in the show notes. But basically, this is a full day on Saturday, October 16th for youth and for their parents. It's going to be held at the Six Flags Vallejo Discovery Kingdom, and it's jointly hosted by all the dioceses of Northern California. Some of the names you'll be hearing there are Matt Marr, Sarah Hart, 10th Avenue North, Addison Road, and David Bissono. A full day at Six Flags with a bunch of Catholic youth running around, and the best part of the day, as far as I'm concerned, is an hour-long prayer vigil for Catholic parents for their teens, hosted by Sarah Hart. So it's a great opportunity to spend a day somewhere in the vicinity of your teen, but also to pray with and for them. So I hope you'll check out this event at norcalcatholicyouth.com. If you've got a project that you need help promoting, drop me an email to lisa@catholicmom.com. I'd love to help spread the word here on Catholic Moments. And we're about out of time for this week's show. I'm going to leave you with a special treat this week. It's a new song called I Like Being Catholic, and I think you're going to have a really fun time listening to it. It's from an artist called Justin Stroh, and we're going to have a link to Justin's work over in the website. But first time I heard this song, I thought I got to get that for the podcast, so I hope you enjoy it. As we close out, I will, as usual, ask you for your feedback. You can reach us anytime on our voice feedback line, which is 206-339-9272. You can drop me an email to lisa@catholicmom.com or be my friend on Facebook or Twitter. And also over on Facebook, we've got a very intimate little Catholic Moments group. So go to facebook.com/Catholic Moments. And until next week, I hope that you enjoy being a Catholic, and we'll see you soon. God bless everyone. Bye-bye.
I like being a Catholic. What about you? Yes, I do. All right now, I got the fullness of the faith. Hey, I ain't no fool. No, that's cool. All right now, I like being a Catholic. Let me tell you about it. I go to Mass on Sunday and daily if I want to. I go to confession if I got more to sin in my soul. I still go anyway because this grace coming through. I like being a Catholic. Some people don't understand that there is a man in Rome, and he's holding on to keys. We're talking JP2, 264th successor of Peter. We're talking to Pope. World Youth Day 93. Need I say more? No way! There we were all gathered around the Pope, looking for the words we long for. Humane vitae is another thing I'd like to mention. Pope Paul VI set us straight on contraception. I like being a Catholic. What about you? Yes, I do! Alright now, I got the fullness of the faith. Hey, I ain't no fool. Yo, that's cool! Alright now, I like being a Catholic. I like being a Catholic. I like being a Catholic. What about you? Yes, I do! Alright now, I got the fullness of the faith. I got the fullness of the faith. I got the fullness of the faith. Hey, I ain't no fool. Yo, that's cool! Alright, done.
SQPN, leading the way in Catholic new media.